Before it was Paris, it was Lutetia, a modest Roman town hugging the banks of the Seine, clustered on the island we now call Île de la Cité. The Romans built their forum, their baths, their arena on the left bank. This was a provincial outpost, nothing compared to Rome or Lyon. Maybe 10,000 people lived here. The river made it useful for trade, and the island made it easy to defend. No one could have guessed this small settlement would become one of the most important cities on Earth. But the bones were already there. Clovis I raises his arm to the heavens at the Battle of Tolbiac. Legend says he prayed to his wife's Christian god mid-battle, promising to convert if granted victory. He won. That decision changed everything. Clovis united the Frankish tribes, converted to Christianity, and in 511 made Paris his capital. He built the Basilica of Saint-Denis, where French kings would be buried for over 1,000 years. Paris went from Roman backwater to the seat of a new kingdom. The city's rise had officially begun. This painting shows a king visiting a construction site that would change architecture forever. The Abbey of Saint-Denis, just north of Paris, became the first Gothic building in the world. Abbot Suger wanted light. He pushed his builders to create thinner walls, pointed arches, and vast stained glass windows. The result was revolutionary. Heavy Romanesque darkness gave way to soaring height and colored light. Every great cathedral that followed, including Notre-Dame, copied what started here. Paris didn't just build a church, it invented a style that would define Europe for 4 centuries. Scholars in robes gather for debate in this 16th century miniature depicting the medieval Sorbonne. The University of Paris emerged around 1150, becoming one of the first universities in Europe and the undisputed center of theological learning. Students came from across the continent to study philosophy, theology, and law on the left bank. The Latin Quarter got its name because Latin was all you'd hear in these streets. This institution shaped European thought for centuries. Popes, kings, and philosophers all passed through its halls. Paris became synonymous with intellectual authority. From the très riche Heures du Duc de Berry, one of the most beautiful manuscripts ever made. The royal palace gleams white behind peasants sowing winter wheat. The Sainte-Chapelle's spire rises on the left. This was the seat of French kings for centuries. The scene looks peaceful, but France was tearing itself apart. The 100 Years' War raged. Civil war between rival factions turned Paris into a battleground. Within years, English troops would occupy the city. The Limbourg brothers painted an idealized Paris. The reality outside the manuscript was far darker. The Bridge of Money Changers. Goldsmiths and currency dealers set up shop on the Grand Pont in the 12th century, and the name stuck for 700 years. If you needed to exchange foreign coins or buy precious metals, this was where you came. Hubert Robert painted this scene during one of the bridge's many reconstructions. Several versions have stood on this spot, each eventually replaced. The current bridge dates from Napoleon III's reign in the 1850s. The location remained valuable real estate across 8 centuries of Parisian history. English knights jousting in the shadow of Notre-Dame. This actually happened. Henry V of England conquered Paris in 1420 and was recognized as heir to the French throne. English soldiers patrolled these streets. English nobles held tournaments beneath French spires. The occupation lasted 12 years. Parisians suffered through famine, disease, and divided loyalties. Joan of Arc tried to liberate the city in 1429, but failed at its gates. Only in 1436 did the French king finally reclaim his capital. The scars of English occupation would shape French identity for generations. The Hôtel de Ville rises on the right bank, seat of Parisian city government. Hofbrauer's engraving shows the Renaissance finally reaching the city's architecture. Italian influences blend with French traditions in ornate facades and classical columns. Workers construct along the riverbank, while boats crowd the Seine. Paris was transforming from a medieval city into something grander. The religious wars hadn't stopped building entirely. This building would stand for nearly 300 years before the Paris Commune burned it in 1871. The current Hôtel de Ville is a reconstruction, built to look exactly like what you see here. The tournament that ended an era. At the Hôtel des Tournelles, in June 1559, King Henry II jousted against the captain of his guard. A lance shattered. A splinter pierced the king's visor, driving into his eye and brain. Henry died 10 days later in agony. His widow, Catherine de' Medici, ordered the Tournelle demolished. She never wanted to see the place again. France plunged into decades of religious civil war. The king's death left a power vacuum that wouldn't be filled until Henry IV took Paris in 1594. The Catholic League marches through Paris, armed priests and citizens parading together. The city had become a fortress of religious extremism, refusing to accept the Protestant Henry of Navarre as king. For 4 months, Henry's army surrounded Paris. Inside, people starved. They ate horses, then dogs, then rats. Thousands died. The League told them suffering was holy. Henry finally lifted the siege, but Paris held out for 4 more years. Only when he converted to Catholicism did the gates open. "Paris is worth a mass," he reportedly said. The city had nearly destroyed itself for faith. The carousel celebrates Paris transformed. Henry IV built the Place Royale as the first planned square in the city, bringing order and elegance to what had been chaos. Identical brick facades surround a perfect rectangle. Knights joust while crowds pack every window and rooftop. This was the new Paris designed to impress. The aristocracy moved in immediately. The Marais became the fashionable district. Today we call it Place des Vosges. The buildings still stand, the oldest planned square in Paris. 4 centuries later, it remains some of the most expensive real estate in France. The ideas that would destroy the old world were born in rooms like this. Madame Geoffrin hosted philosophers, writers, and artists every week. Voltaire, Diderot, D'Alembert, Rousseau passed through her doors. No topic was forbidden. Religion, politics, science, art, all dissected over dinner and conversation. The encyclopédie was partly planned in these gatherings. Enlightenment thought spread through Parisian salons before it spread through books. These well-dressed intellectuals believed reason could remake society. Within decades, their ideas would fuel a revolution that consumed many of them. A 5-year-old boy rides out of the Ile de la Cité, suddenly King of France. Louis XIV, the Sun King, was dead after 72 years on the throne. His great-grandson inherited an exhausted kingdom drowning in debt. Crowds gathered to see the child who would rule them. The Regency period began immediately, with adults fighting over who would control France until the boy came of age. Louis XV would reign for 59 years, presiding over decline and growing unrest. His grandson would face the guillotine. The moment everything changed, a Parisian mob descended on the medieval fortress, hunting for gunpowder and weapons. The Bastille held only 7 prisoners, but that wasn't the point. It was a symbol of royal tyranny, and the people wanted it gone. The garrison surrendered after hours of fighting. The crowd murdered the governor and paraded his head through the streets. Within months, the fortress was demolished stone by stone. July 14th became France's national day. The revolution had begun. and nothing would stop the bloodshed that followed. Paris caught between revolutions. The Bourbon kings had returned after Napoleon's defeat, but their grip was slipping. This view of the Place du Châtelet and Pont au Change shows a city holding its breath. In July 1830, Paris erupted again. 3 days of street fighting toppled Charles X. The barricades went up across these very streets. Another king fell. The July Revolution installed Louis Philippe, the citizen king. Parisians had learned they could remake their government in a weekend. They would do it again in 1848. Baron Haussmann tore medieval Paris apart and rebuilt it from scratch. Napoleon III gave him absolute power to transform the city, and he used it without mercy. Entire neighborhoods disappeared. 20,000 buildings fell. What rose in their place was the Paris we know today. Wide boulevards lined with uniform cream-colored buildings, all the same height, all the same style. The Avenue de l'Opéra shows Haussmann's vision perfectly. Critics called it destruction. Defenders called it progress. The cramped streets where revolutionaries built barricades became open avenues where troops could march, beautiful and controllable. The same year they built the Eiffel Tower, they built this. The Gallery of Machines stretched 420 meters long, the largest interior space in the world. Iron and glass soared overhead while visitors gaped at engines, turbines, and industrial marvels. Paris hosted 5 World's Fairs in the late 1800s, declaring itself the capital of progress and modernity. Millions came to see the future. The gallery was demolished in 1909, considered outdated. The Eiffel Tower, originally meant to be temporary, somehow survived. Paris kept one monument to that moment and let the other vanish. 2 years into the Great War, troops marched past the Petit Palais on their way to the front. The building had been constructed for the 1900 World's Fair, a celebration of peace and progress. Now it watched young men heading toward the trenches. Paris was never occupied, but it lived under constant threat. German shells fell on the city. Big Bertha bombarded it from 120 kilometers away. The front line sat just 100 kilometers to the northeast. These soldiers marched through a city holding its breath, waiting to see if it would survive. The new millennium tested Paris again. Terrorist attacks in 2015 struck at the heart of the city, killing 130 people at cafes and a concert hall. 4 years later, Notre-Dame burned on live television, its spire collapsing while the world watched. But Paris has always known how to rebuild. Notre-Dame reopened in 2024. The same year, the city hosted the Olympics, and the Seine finally became clean enough to swim in. 2,000 years of history. Roman outpost, medieval capital, revolutionary battleground, occupied city, modern metropolis. Paris has burned, starved, bled, and rebuilt itself more times than anyone can count. It's still here.